Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History, Avec, Hemingway. I'm back with Claudine, and we're doing part 2, Notre Dame paintings today.
Yeah, and anytime we stretch something to 2 parts, it's because I have done so much research and I just can't. I don't have an edit button on what I share, but I have been obsessed with these paintings for probably 10 years, and I have been doing research, and I have a notebook that has 80 pages of research about these paintings. So hold on.
Hold on for all you history buffs.
History nerds like me. So we ended up last week talking about the Night of the Fire and these paintings. And so that is where we're going to start. So, of course, the fire as we know it, April 15th, 2019, which is exactly 5 months from today that you were listening to this, it reopens, and I can't wait. But on the Night of the Fire, only 2 of the paintings were taken out. And the rest of the paintings didn't come out until the very end of the week on April 19th. 15 of them were removed by the Bovie Company. The Bovie Company is amazing, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. But all the paintings were taken to the Louvre. On April 24th, 3 more were removed because they were below of the North Tower, and the North Tower is both of the towers have the bells in it, but the North Tower has 8 of the bells. And that was the Night of the Fire when they said, we've got 20 minutes to get this out to save the cathedral, or it's probably going to be gone, because in the North Tower, the flames had started to get closer to the belfry, and the belfry is all wood, and that's what's holding up these massive bells, that if the belfry had burned and the bells dropped, it would have taken out the facade of the church, and that would have been it. So they could not go under that area until they really had it more secured. But 2 of the paintings didn't come out until over a year later in August of 2020.
I can't imagine the fire, though. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it would have been crazy. So the Office of the French Historical Monuments and the president himself decided that whatever was in the cathedral on April 14th, 2019, the day before the fire, has to return. There is one exception because the furniture is all changing. We'll tell you that another day. But we're talking today mostly about the restoration. I'll tell you a little bit about many of the paintings that were there. So the fire gave the church the opportunity to restore 22 paintings that were held in Notre Dame, but it isn't the first restoration for most of the paintings, but likely the most complete and probably the best one in 300 to 400 years. That is the whole thing about Notre Dame. The love of my life, Philippe Villeneuve, as we all know, my secret boyfriend, the head architect of the museums of France and over Notre Dame right now, he said that the opportunity that the fire has given them to completely restore every single inch of the cathedral would be something that would take probably 70 to 80 years to do if it hadn't been for the fire. So, one life gives you lemons.
Exactly. Life gives you lemons.
You make lemonade and you restore the entire cathedral. So the restorations before the 19th century were usually undertaken by artists themselves. Not always the best option, especially when we talked about our girl Mona Lisa many times. From 1731 to 1781, the restoration was done by an artist named Achille René Gregoire. He gave just a general cleaning. In 1781. Another artist, Godefroy, added more in-depth restoration where he included new canvases, cleaned, filled, repainted, and varnished. In 1806 to 1837, Francois Giroux carried out the cleaning and revarnishing. And again in 1844, Stanislas de Perrier restored 54 of the paintings. Restorations of paintings have to be done quite frequently, and especially back then. It's not as frequent now. Back then, it was almost like every 30 years or so. But again, in the cathedral, you've got a lot of dirt, you've got a lot of soot, especially from the candles. And if you light candles a lot of times in your house and have it in the same place, look on the wall above you because usually it gets pretty dark. But the role of the restorer should be to clean the paintings and bring back the original version of the painting, and vision of the artist. Their job is not to add to the painting in their own way, and whatever they do, whatever changes they make have to be reversible for later restorers, because the techniques we have in 2024 compared to what they were doing in 1781 are vastly different. We know so much more because of the science and the way that they can investigate these paintings, but I'm sure 80 years, 100 years from now, it's going to be even more. I mean, they probably will have a robot to do it.
I can't wait to see that.
But we're still waiting for the flying cars that the Jetsons promised us. You might not. Do you remember the Jetsons cartoon?
Of course. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet, but we got the AI going.
I know we got the AI. So the when they took everything out, the Bovie company created a storage location and two ateliers in a former airplane hangar. Each painting needed 10 people to move them. Again, remember they're like 15 by 11 feet. Large rolling racks were created that were over 20 feet tall, to hold the paintings during restoration. It took 3 companies of 50 restorers for the 22 paintings to be restored over 24 months.
Holy cow, that took a minute.
Amazing. The Bovie company is one I see all the time because, if I'm not working or with clients, I'm going to museums, and I see them all the time. And this is a company that is well trained in how to move art, store art, do everything. So even though the Louvre has, some of the greatest people in the world working for them, they will have the Bovie company moving and helping to, move stuff around. You have to even be careful when they took things out of Notre Dame, how they wrapped it, cardboard, natural fibers that were used to wrap it. They have to even be careful with once they transport it, that there's not a lot of movement or vibrations, especially when the paintings were slightly damaged from the water and the humidity, which you just don't think about that. You just don't think that that's what you need to keep in mind, but it's pretty fascinating. So the restoration, and I don't know, I mean, some people might be, this is boring, but I think that how they restore these things is fascinating. And if I could spend an entire day with somebody that's a restorer of paintings and sculptures, I would be in heaven. I'd probably last 10 minutes. They'd probably tell me to go away because I'd have too many questions. What are you doing? What's that? What do you do about this?
Driving
But
them
I think
crazy.
it's fascinating. So there's 4 steps in the restoration process. The first one is a condition report in which they do diagnosing it scientifically with imaging by the C2RMF. The C2RMF is probably the elite best restoration business in the world. They are actually underneath the Louvre in the end of the Dunant wing, so more in the garden. But that is where they are, and they have every kind of X-ray or anything you could use. Museums from around the world send their paintings to them to be looked at. They bring their paintings there to use all of their equipment. They were able to do infrared, ultraviolet, reflectography, false color infrared, and other X-rays. The photographer Philippe Salençon was able to do all this work and able to look into and past the restorations, any changes made over time, and also the original intent of the artist. Some of the x-rays even reveal figures that are no longer there, or even a figure in another pose. They could detect the original colors and how they were used or changed. Many of the paintings you see in churches have a very vivid, bright blue, and that blue is made with the gemstone lapis lazuli. And when they use that, and why they use that was also because it was the most expensive paint color at the time. And it kind of is a humble brag of them being like, look at how much money we have. But the with this work, like Mona Lisa, we still are going to do an episode about all the scientific everything they found. They're able to use this to, even if a painting is done on wood, they're able to go through it and look at everything. It's a pretty amazing. Once they have done that, then they know what they need to do for the restoration. So the second step is cleaning the pictorial layer. Solvents are used to carefully clean the painting. The first test is on the edge of the painting before they tackle the body of the work. They first remove the old varnish by slowly thinning it to remove the yellow and degraded layer that alter the colors of the painting. And it's that point it's possible to get that down to the original layer of paint, but that is never touched or removed. And they do this with a Q-tip. So if you have this painting that's 11 by 15 feet, just think of how long that takes with a tiny Q-tip.
That must be painstakingly long. You have to be very
There,
patient.
I do not have the patience. I could research the Mona Lisa or these paintings for 6 months and be just happy as a clam. But if I had to take a humongous painting with a Q-tip, and you have to be so careful too, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, more power to them. They are focused.
Yeah. So what's really interesting, what I've learned over these months is all the different layers on the painting. So we look at a painting and we're like, okay, there it is. There's the painting. But it's once the cleaning is done, it takes the longest time to check the structure of the piece, which is 5 layers. So you have the top layer, and then you have, which is the colorful layer and the varnish. Then below that's the preparation. And that's usually when a lot of times, the artist takes the original canvas and they layer it. When Delacroix painted things like, especially on the frescoes of Saint-Sulpice, he added as many as 15 preparatory layers underneath it. And they will do that on these paintings. And some of the paintings, one of the paintings I'm going to tell you about later, actually he added other colors underneath it that would then affect the colors later. So you have that preparatory layer, then you have the original canvas. Under that, you have canvas and recanvas, sometimes 3 or 4 of those. And then you have the chassis or the support, which is the wooden framing. So once they've checked all that, then they could do to check the support and the canvas. None of the canvases past the pictorial layer that were in Notre Dame are original. So over time, the canvases lose a lot of tension and the adhesive layers in between start to separate, which is a big thing that started to happen because of the humidity that was there after the fire. All of this is examined in the first course of action in the scientific research. And for some of the paintings, that are only damaged in patches, they're able to pull that away and just restore a few of the paintings in that way. 12 of the 22 paintings that were in Notre Dame needed to be fully relined. For the damaged ones, it takes multiple steps. And at this exhibit that I shared on YouTube, which I'll post another link if you didn't see it last week and when I talked about in the episode, there is actually, I show you pictures of how they're doing all this. So what they will do if it's really damaged, they will lay a protective layer of multiple layers of paper on top of the painting, cover it with water so it adheres to it, which you just think that sounds frightening. Then they turn over the entire painting. And then they go in with a solvent, brushing the outer layers of the canvas to pull and peel away the damaged layers. Once the old layers are removed, then they're able to add and restructure it with new layers, which I just don't even I'd be so scared to do that because a canvas really isn't very thick. The glue is then reapplied and the new canvas is added. The protective paper on the front is removed and then placed back into its structure. 8 of the pieces didn't need full relining, as I said, and 3 from the 17th century have never been relined. So 3 of them created in the mid 1600s were still in good enough condition they didn't need to be changed. Isn't that amazing?
They really did a great job to make it last that long. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I mean, some of these, like when Bovie had to create, they had to actually also add these massive tables to lay these paintings on. And some of them, these paintings are so wide that they then created this structure, rolling structure to sit on top of it that almost looked like a ladder. And so they could roll and be in the middle of the back of the painting. Because if it's 11 feet across, you can't just reach over there. So they had to create this thing so the restorers could get on this rolling, kind of a little belt and get and to be able to peel off and remove the adhesive. And then some of them, when they were done, they would be rolled so then they could roll the new canvases on the back of it. It's absolutely amazing what they were able to do and what they can do.
Yeah, they were so advanced for so long ago.
Yeah, it's really really cool. All of these restorers, and the same thing with the architects, like Philippe will say this, that they look at what they are doing as just the piece and the chapter in the story of this piece of art or the entire, church. So it's really cool in the way that I talk about, the love of my life, Philippe. Is the same is the way people later are they're gonna talk about him the way I talk about you know, um, Eugene Delacroix. So it's like it's just amazing. I completely forgot his name for a second, but it's so cool, and I love that the fact that they're all just like, oh, we just know that we're just as part of the story as it goes. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, wow. It's
Yeah.
just, and to be able to go and see all this stuff soon again, I cannot wait.
I know. So of the 76 LeMays, which I said last week, there were 76 originally, 13 of them were still in the cathedral. The ones that are there, the oldest one is 1635, and it's The Descent of the Holy Spirit by Jacques Blanchard. It is the oldest and the fifth in the series of the 76. The painting represents the Pentecost. Blanchard was a personal painter to Louis XIII. He was known as the French Titian. St. Peter is viewed from behind, looking up at the Holy Spirit, which is just kind of this golden cloud on the right side of the painting. In 1844, this painting was in basically completely almost in ruins, and it was relined. The cracks were filled and restored. Now they all look amazing. The painting from 1635, a Saint Pierre healing the sick with his shadow by Laurent de la Hare, is the first of the 2 paintings for the LeMays he did. The other one is 1637. And the very bottom corner is the coat of arms of the 2 donors. So I said last week how there was 2 elders of the Goldsmith Guild that got to choose which artist was going to be for that next year, and so they got to add their initials a lot of times, or the painter would add their coat of arms. The restoration of the red, blue, and orange of the cloths in this is striking compared to the previous image. The really cool thing about this exhibit, and I put some of this in my YouTube video, every single painting has it has an iPad, and this iPad's just stationary in the display, but it shows you could scroll up and down with your finger and see the before and the after. It's so cool. I love that they did this. The next one, 1637, also the one by Lara. There's a conversion of St. Paul. It's depicting the story of Paul on his way to Damascus, to persecute the Christians. He's tossed to the ground when hearing Christ, which led to his conversion. The restoration revealed feathers on the helmets that had disappeared under the layers of dirt. From 1806 to 1962, it was in a different church in Paris. It was at the Église Thomas d'Aquin over in the 7th, and then it was finally returned in 1962. The 1639, the Centurion Corneille at the feet of Saint Pierre is done by Aubin Vouet. He is the youngest brother of Simon Vouet, who was basically nine out of 10 of these artists all studied under Simon. He was one of the most prolific painters under Louis the 13th and 14th. Aubin painted 3 Lamés. He painted more than anybody else, 1632, 39, and 40. Corneille had a vision of the Virgin that told him to go to Jaffa to find Pierre. The scene captures a moment when Pierre tells him to rise as he is just a man like him. During the research of this painting, they saw that Vouet had made changes to the arms and the hands of Corneille. And hands and feet can be very difficult to paint. Leonardo is known for, how good he was. And when you see his paintings, he almost always has the hands very featured. And one of my other favorite paintings we've talked about, it's Jericho's The Raft and the Medusa. He had such a hard time painting feet that he just decided, forget it, and just put a sock on the guy.
A sock. I love it.
When Notre Dame reopens, this painting will move to the chapel of Saint-Geneviève on the south side. Again, all of these lamés are going to be on the west wall of these chapels. 1642 is a preaching of Saint Pierre in Jerusalem by Charles Poussin. He also comes up into another amazing thing that used to be in Notre Dame. 1643 is a crucifixion of Saint Pierre by Sebastian Bourdon. Pierre didn't feel he was worthy to be crucified on the cross like Jesus, so he asked to be tortured upside down, as depicted in this diagonal focus of the painting. The 1647 is a martyrdom of Saint Andre by Charles Lebrun. Lebrun was only 28 years old at the time when he was selected for his first of 2 Mays. The next year, the Queen Mother, Anne of Austria, and he created the Royal Academy. And by 1664, he was a painter of Louis XIV. And also we know that he created Versailles. Saint Andre was a brother of Saint Pierre and the disciple of Jesus, known for being crucified on an X-shaped cross. Instead of placing him on the cross in the picture, Lebrun depicts him in the moments just before. So he's kind of on his knees, but his arms and legs are stretched out, kind of recreating the cross that he is going to then be killed on. Also, fun fact, the cross of St. Andrew, that is the Scottish flag, is basically Saint Andre.
Whoa, that's wild.
Yeah. 1650, St. Paul blinding the false prophet is by Nicolas Loire. And during the restoration, they found a number 22 on the lower left corner, noting that it was the 22nd in the collection. I love it when these restorations, reveal something we haven't even seen because of all the dirt. 1951 is the stoning of Saint Etienne by Charles Lebrun. Saint Etienne is a very key figure to the churches of Paris because it was the name of the first church on the Ile de la Cité, where Notre Dame now stands. And then, of course, there's Saint Etienne du Mont up on the hill. That has something to do with our girl Saint-Geneviève and Midnight in Paris. 1655 is the flagellation of St. Paul and St. Silas. And then in 1670, it is St. Andre quivering with joy at the sight of his torturer. I'm not sure I'd be quivering with joy before I was going to get tortured, but that's Gabriel Blanchard. 1687 is the preaching of the prophet of Agabus to St. Paul by Louis Charon. And the last one is 1702, the sons of Scevia, beaten by the Ponlé by Matthew Elia. That is from the Acts of the Apostles. So I said earlier, from 1630 to 1670s, they were of the Acts of the Apostle. And then later they were mostly on the Gospels, even though the 1702 one was, they ventured back to the life of the apostles. But the other amazing thing that you could see at this exhibit, which I have in my video, is about another thing they had there. They also had a piece of the carpet we've talked about before. They also had examples of the furniture that's going to be back into Notre Dame. So you get a sneak peek of that on my video, but we'll tell you about that another time. But what was another thing that was really cool to see there was these tapestries, and they were the tapestries of the life of the Virgin. There was 14 beautifully woven tapestries originally created from 1638 to 1657. They were done under the instruction of Cardinal Richelieu with the canon Notre Dame, Michael Le Massé. They had decided to do these after the vow of Louis XIII was created. The first two tapestries were done by Philippe de Champigny, who was kind of the personal artist and the only one Richelieu allowed to paint him. He did the one of the birth of the Virgin and the presentation of the Virgin and the temple. Those were both completed November 13th, 1640. In 1650, the canon of the church resumed the project and ordered 12 additional tapestries, one by Jacques Stellier and the other by Charles Poussin, who created 11 of them. These tapestries are massive in size. And when they do these tapestries, if you've been in the Louvre, if you've been in a lot of other museums, like if you've gone to the Cluny and you've seen the massive tapestries of the unicorns, those are all created from a painting. So they did a painting before, which are usually called a carton, it's kind of like cartoon. And so the artist does these paintings with the express intent that it's going to be a tapestry. So it's not like, hey, look at this painting we have. Let's weave it up and turn it into a tapestry. So they originally created some of these. Sometimes I have found the paintings on display, but it's not very often. All of these are created in Paris at the atelier of Pierre Dumour, except for one, which is the Marriage of the Virgin, that was created in Brussels after the design of Stella. They were all inaugurated and hung on April 3rd, 1658 in the choir. Each one of them in the upper corners, in the center of the top, has the cipher and the coat of arms of Cardinal Richelieu. And then on the bottom corners, has a coat of arms of Messel. Robert de Cote's renovations that were done under Louis XIV in 1730, which caused the disappearance of tapestries, painting, and also destroyed the rood screen of Anne of Austria. Also found the end of these tapestries. In 1739, the tapestries were sold to the Strasbourg Cathedral over there in Strasbourg, which I have been to, but I didn't see these because they're only displayed once a year in the nave between the Advent and until the Epiphany of January 6th. So I might need to go back down, even though at the Gobelins right now there is 5 or 6 of them. So, but
Oh, wow.
they're massive. I mean, these tapestries are twice as big as the paintings. They're huge. But it is just like a treasure trove to get to see these. Those won't return to Notre Dame. They are going to open a museum and the Hotel Dieu, which is probably going to take a few years after we get the cathedral reopened, but maybe they'll come down there for a visit or for an exhibition sometime. I think I should let them know that would be a good idea.
Exactly. You should tell them.
Yeah. And so, but we will, in a couple weeks, do another episode about what's going on right now with Notre Dame, what's still to come. It is so exciting because right now, here at the beginning of July, more and more of the scaffolding is off of the roof and the entire roof line is going to be visible soon. And I cannot wait.
Me too. And guys, make sure you head over to ClaudineHemingway.com to learn more, book her for a tour, listen up, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.